A sparkline is a tiny chart in a spreadsheet cell that gives a visual representation of data. We'll start out by looking at sparkline example. The sparklines you see here in column F are called line sparklines. The zigzagging line goes from left to right. The sparklines get their data from the confection sales C5 through E11. These sparklines instantly show you how sales are doing by displaying trends. For example, Scottish long breads are trending downwards, but beneath that, Sir Rodney scones are trending upwards. The low points have markers in red to draw your eye to them. I've applied column sparklines here in column G to the data. The sparklines are a series of vertical columns. The bigger columns represent the bigger values. The sparklines show a pattern of sales. You can see at a glance that the west region here is trending downwards, and that the east and the north regions had better fourth quarters than the other two regions. The high points are in dark gray and the low points are in red, making it easier to see the highest and lowest values. With a win-loss sparkline in column G that shows only whether the year had a gain or a loss. For positive values, the square is at the top. That's a win. For negative values, the square is at the bottom of the cell. That's a loss. The red color of the losses stand out, showing you instantly that 2 years were losses. To do that, I'll click in cell G5 where I want my first sparkline to appear. Now notice that I'm leaving an empty column between the data and the sparklines because I'm going to add another column to the table in just a minute. Then I'll click the Insert tab, and in the Sparklines group, I'll click Line. Excel wants to know what data I want to include for the sparkline, so I'm going to click here on my first row to here, and then I'll click OK, and there's my first sparkline. Now to fill in sparklines for the rest of the data, I can just move my cursor till it becomes a black plus sign, click, and then drag. Now if you want to, you can create all the sparklines at once instead of using this method. Now first, I need to clear the sparklines that I've already got. So on the Design tab, which appears when you create a sparkline, I'll click Clear and then select Clear Selected Sparklines. And now I can start over. Now my cells are selected where I want the sparklines to appear. So once again, on the Insert tab, in the Sparklines group, I'll click Line. And this time, instead of selecting just the first row, I'll select all my data, and then I'll click OK. And I've got all my sparklines. Now either way, whether I create one sparkline first and then drag, or create them all at once, Excel creates a group of sparklines, and I'll click here and you can see this blue line around the group. And that means any formatting changes I make to the sparklines will be applied to the entire group. Changes after you've created the sparklines. That's not a problem. The sparklines will adjust with the revised data. For example, say that this number here, 841.80, should really be 268.85. Now before I press enter, take a look at the sparkline in cell G11. Press enter, and you see the sparkline goes down to reflect the revised data. Lines stand out. In the Show group here on the Design tab, I've got quite a few options. Now if you'll keep your eye on the sparklines in column G as I make these changes, I can select to show the high point and the low point, or instead of that I can show the first point and the last point. Or instead of that, I can show markers, which displays a little round dot for each month. I like that, so I think I'll keep that. Now in the Style group here, I can select colors, different styles for the line sparklines, and I think I'll choose this one with the bright red markers. Now if I preferred, instead of taking something that's already been created for me, I can design my own sparkline color by clicking sparkline color here. And let me see, I think I'd like the sparkline to be really dark, so I'll select black. And I can also select a color for the markers, but I like that red, so I'll just keep it as is. Now I can also change the weight of the sparklines to make them stand out a little bit more. So I'll click here on sparkline color, and here's weight. And right now they're 3/4 point. I think I'll try 1.5 points and see how that looks. And that makes them stand out quite a bit more, so I'll keep that. I'll click here in cell G4 and drag. Click the Insert tab, and this time I'm going to select Column. And I need to select the data range for the column sparkline, so just click here and drag to select all my data here, and then I'll click OK. By the way, if you're not sure if you should use a line or a column sparkline, just try them out and see which works best for you. For example, on the Design tab, here in the Type group, it says Line, so I'll just click, and I think I like the column ones better, so I'll go back to column, and it's that easy to switch between the two types. Now I want to make my high and my low points in different colors. In the Show group, I'll click High Point, and I'll click Low Point. That's how easy it is to make a column sparkline. The lowest values here are just barely visible, and I can fix that by adjusting the vertical axes. By default, the vertical axes are scaled so that the minimum and maximum values are just below and above the data range. That's called automatic. Now I'll change that. My sparklines are selected. I'll go up to where it says axis, and then under minimum I'm going to select custom value. Now my lowest value here is 311, and I'll just take a guess and type in 250 as the minimum instead of 311 and click OK. And if you'll keep your eye on the column sparklines, there you can see that they're more visible now by making that axis at 250 instead of at the minimum. Right now I've got line sparklines for each of 3 regions, Canada, Europe, and the United States. And the sparklines reflect this data for mountain bikes and road and touring bikes. And this information is very interesting to your immediate manager, but his manager would like to see sparklines for the bottom line, for the totals for Canada and Europe and United States. And so I'll go ahead and do that. And first, I'll select all of these 3 groups of sparklines. And on the Design tab, in the Clear group, I'll select Clear Selected Sparkline Groups. Next, I want the column sparklines I'll create to be a bit larger than normal, so I'm going to merge these 3 cells. On the Home tab, in the Alignment group, I'll click Merge Cells. And then I'll select these 3 cells and just press the F4 key on my keyboard to redo my last action, or to do again rather. And I'll select these 3 and press F4 again. And now I'm ready to create my column sparklines. First, I'll select the data for Canada. Then, on the Insert tab, in the Sparklines group, I'll click Column. Then I'll click here where I want the sparkline to be placed and click OK. And there's my column sparkline. Now I'll do the same thing for Europe. Select the data, Insert, Column, click here where I want the sparkline to be, click OK, and then finally for the United States, select the data, Insert, Column, click here, and then click OK. Now that gives the manager, upper manager, an immediate idea of the look for the totals of each of these three regions. But we've got a little problem here in that the axis is so small, the minimum values are very difficult to read. And so I'm going to adjust the axis by making a custom axis for all three at one time. Since all this data is related, I'm going to click Axis, and then under Vertical Axis Minimum Value Options, I'll click Custom Value. Now the smallest value for all of the data is, I believe it's 11,185, and I want all of the groups of sparklines to have the same minimum. I'm going to type in 10,750 and then click OK, and if you'll keep your eye on the sparklines in column J, and you can see the minimums are now much easier to read. Win-loss sparklines. For this type of sparkline, there's a square at the top of the cell for a win and a square at the bottom of the cell for a loss. First, here are the 5 year-end values for Northwind stock. To create win-loss sparklines, I'll select the stock averages. Then, on the Insert tab, in the Sparklines group, I'll click Win-Loss. I'll click here to select where I want my sparklines, and there I've got it. The red boxes at the bottom of the cells quickly tell you that 2 years were a loss. Here's another example of win-loss. The win-loss record for a softball league. The negative numbers, -1, stand for a loss, while the positive numbers, 1, stand for a win. To create the sparklines, I'll select all of the wins and the losses. Then, on the Insert tab in the Sparklines group, I'll click Win-Loss. To select where I want the sparklines, I'll just click and drag here, and then I'll click OK. Now we can quickly see that Contoso lost their first game, but won all the rest of their games. Fourth Coffee had a rough start, but then finished pretty strongly, and Poor Humongous Insurance won one and then never won again.